She froze, just for a second, long enough for whispers to start. But what they didn't see was what Riley saw. The camera footage, it changed everything. If stories like this speak to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You won't believe what the camera captured next. The video was already 3 million views deep when Riley Hayes finally found the courage to watch it herself. She sat in her childhood bedroom, laptop balanced on her knees, the familiar walls covered with swimming ribbons and lifeguard certifications that now felt like accusations. Her thumb hovered over the play button for the 100th time that day. The comments section was a feeding frenzy. How do you just freeze when someone's drowning? One read. Another, this girl should never work around water again. The most liked comment, with over 10,000 hearts, simply said, "Coward." Riley pressed play. The phone footage was shaky, clearly shot from the pool deck bleachers. The timestamp showed Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. She watched herself on screen, red lifeguard swimsuit, whistle around her neck, perched on the familiar white chair at Willow River Pool. Everything looked normal until the 8-year-old boy, Ethan, slipped into the deep end. The video showed him going under, showed other swimmers pointing and shouting. And there was Riley, visible in the frame for exactly 4 seconds before she disappeared. The camera stayed fixed on the empty lifeguard chair as chaos erupted around the pool. Someone else, a parent, had jumped in to pull Ethan out. When Riley finally reappeared in the frame, she was walking back to her station, soaking wet. But those crucial seconds were missing. The internet had filled in the blanks with its narrative. She had frozen, panicked, failed. Riley closed the laptop and stared at her reflection in the black screen. Even she was starting to believe them. The pool board had already suspended her pending investigation. Her college admission officer had called that morning about character concerns delaying her acceptance. The local news van had been parked outside their house since dawn. Her phone buzzed with another notification, another comment, another stranger telling her she was worthless. But somewhere in the depths of that viral video, in those missing seconds that no phone camera had captured, lay a truth that would change everything. Riley just didn't know it yet. 12 hours earlier, Riley had started her shift the same way she had for the past 2 summers, arriving 15 minutes early, checking the chemical levels, and doing a quick sweep of the pool deck for safety hazards. She was scheduled to graduate in 3 weeks, and this job had been her refuge, a place that looked great on a college resume where she felt competent, needed, and important. Morning, superstar, Coach Terrence had called out as she set up her chair. At 62, he still moved like the competitive swimmer he'd been in college, all efficient motion and quiet authority. He'd hired Riley when she was 16, fresh from lifeguard certification, awkward and eager to prove herself. Ready for another day of keeping these idiot kids from drowning themselves, he'd joked, not knowing how prophetic those words would become. That morning, Riley had done what she always did, kept the pool running with quiet care. She helped Mrs. Bennett with her backstroke, comforted a crying toddler, and bandaged Jimmy's scraped knee. In the shallow end, 5-year-old Holly Brennan paddled with determination, her floaties bobbing as her mom looked on. No cameras caught it, but this was who Riley was. Everything changed at 3:47 p.m. Ethan Williams, 8 years old and a decent swimmer, had been playing with friends near the pool's edge, a game of tag that moved too close to the deep end. Riley had been tracking their movement, ready to intervene if needed, when Holly's floaty started deflating in the shallow end. 20 feet away, the little girl didn't panic at first. She just looked confused as the bright pink ring began to sag around her tiny frame. Her mother was distracted, talking to another parent about summer camp options. Holly took one step toward deeper water, then another, the broken floaty now more hindrance than help. Riley saw it all in a split second. Ethan slipping into the deep end just as Holly stepped into the water. Over her head in the shallow end, 2 emergencies, 2 children, 20 feet apart. She made the choice that would haunt her for weeks. Save the child in the most immediate danger. First, Holly was smaller, couldn't swim, and was actively sinking, while Ethan had at least some swimming ability and had just entered the water. Riley launched herself from the chair, racing toward Holly. She scooped the little girl up and passed her quickly to her now alert mother, then spun around to race back toward Ethan. By the time she reached the deep end, another parent had already jumped in. The whole rescue took maybe 30 seconds, but the phone camera had only captured part of it, the part where Riley wasn't at her post, wasn't visible, wasn't saving the boy everyone was watching. Now, sitting in her room as the internet tore her apart, Riley couldn't stop replaying those 30 seconds. Should she have blown her whistle first? Called for backup? Let Holly drown to stay at her assigned post? Coach Terrence's words from that afternoon echoed in her mind. Undisappointed, Riley, I thought you were better than this. I thought I could trust you. At home, her parents waited in tense silence, the TV muted but still glowing with headlines they didn't want to believe. Riley entered, damp from the pool, her uniform clinging to her like guilt. They're saying I froze, she said quietly, sinking into the couch. Her father sat beside her, his voice careful. Did you? Riley didn't hesitate. No. I made a choice. She didn't explain further, not yet. The weight of that moment, two kids in danger, one decision to make, was still too heavy. Her parents didn't press. They just sat with her, the silence no longer accusatory, but full of something else, the beginning of understanding. By evening, the story had reached the local news. Riley watched herself become a cautionary tale from the safety of her bedroom, blinds drawn. World shut out. The news anchor's voice played on loop. A lifeguard's hesitation nearly cost a child his life. The video replayed again and again, each loop stripping away a little more of who Riley thought she was. Her phone buzzed non-stop, texts filled with awkward sympathy, missed calls from reporters, social media alerts she couldn't bear to open. That night, Riley lay awake, haunted by 30 seconds that changed everything. In her mind, she replayed the day with different outcomes, faster decisions, to lives saved. No blame, but reality was harsher. She'd saved Holly, yet the world only saw Ethan struggling alone. Her college dreams sat on her desk, the acceptance letter now a painful reminder of a future in limbo. The scholarship she'd earned felt like it was slipping away, all because of a video that told half the story. Eyes closed, she tried to block out the crowd's gasp, the weight of Holly in her arms, and the echo of a judgment she hadn't earned. She couldn't believe no one had spoken up, but mostly, she tried to forget that she was beginning to doubt herself. That maybe the mob was right. Maybe she had failed. Maybe saving one child while another nearly drowned wasn't heroism at all, but the worst kind of mistake. Shannon Reed had been a competitive swimmer for 12 years, before a shoulder injury ended her college career and pushed her toward journalism. Now, at 28, she covered local news for the Riverside Tribune, but she still spent most evenings at the Willow River Pool, keeping her stroke sharp and her connection to the water alive. Which is why, when the viral video of Riley Hayes started making rounds, something immediately felt wrong. Shannon first saw the video while scrolling through social media during her lunch break. Like millions of others, she watched the shaky phone footage of the lifeguard chair going empty, just as a child needed help. The comments were brutal, the shares relentless. But Shannon paused the video and watched again and again. Her reporter's instincts were screaming that something was missing from this story. Shannon had covered local news long enough to spot a story that didn't add up. And as a former competitive swimmer, she knew lifeguard work wasn't about standing still. It was about split-second choices. The Riley she'd seen during evening swims was calm, capable, and sharp, not someone who panicked. Shannon remembered her pulling a toy from the deep end, helping a kid with a nosebleed, and even performing CPR once in the parking lot. So why did the video show her stepping out of frame? Rewatching the clip, Shannon frowned and grabbed a notepad. The video only showed part of the pool. What was happening in the half that the camera couldn't see? What if Riley hadn't frozen? What if she'd responded to something the camera couldn't see? She reached for the phone. At the newsroom, her editor barely let her speak before brushing it off. The story had already gone viral. Teen lifeguard freezes. Kid nearly drowns. Public outrage. Case closed. But Shannon wasn't convinced. She hung up, opened a blank notebook, and began sketching the pool layout from memory. There were angles the video didn't capture, blind spots, possibilities. This wasn't over, not yet. That evening, Shannon stood at Willow River Pool, retracing the viral video's angle. The deep end was visible, but the shallow end, tucked behind the pool house, was out of frame. Just enough space for the truth to hide. If something had happened in the shallow end, the next morning, Shannon got to work. She called the Willow River Pool Board, requesting access to the surveillance footage. As expected, she was met with polite deflection. The board chair, Robert Clark, cited an ongoing internal investigation and expressed concern about compromising the process. Shannon didn't push. Instead, she shifted her approach, framing her inquiry not as a journalist chasing headlines, but as someone trying to protect a young woman's reputation from being permanently damaged by a one-sided narrative. She emphasized the danger of judgment built on incomplete evidence, and slowly, she saw the resistance soften, not out of trust, but perhaps out of conscience. It took 3 days of persistent calls, a formal records request filed under the state's Freedom of Information Act, and finally a veiled threat to investigate the pool board's own safety protocols. Before Clark relented, 1 hour, he told Shannon on Friday morning, "You can view the footage, but no recording devices, no photographs, no sharing with other media outlets until our investigation is complete." Shannon agreed, though she had no intention of keeping quiet if the footage revealed what she suspected. The pool's administrative office smelled like chlorine and old paperwork. Clark led her to a cramped room filled with monitors and recording equipment. The surveillance system was more sophisticated than Shannon had expected. 8 camera angles covering every inch of the pool area. Tuesday, 3:47 p.m., Clark said, pulling up the footage. "This is the timestamp from the incident." Shannon leaned forward, watching the multiple screens simultaneously. She could see Riley on the main monitor, alert, scanning the pool area with the methodical attention of an experienced lifeguard. Other cameras showed various pool activities, lap swimmers in the main pool, children playing in the shallow end, parents lounging on deck chairs. Then she saw Holly Brennan. Camera captured the 5-year-old in the shallow end, her bright pink floaty clearly visible. Shannon watched as the inflatable ring began to sag, then deflate completely. Holly's mother was turned away, deep in conversation with another parent about what looked like summer camp brochures. Holly took a step toward deeper water, the broken floaty now dragging her down instead of keeping her afloat. On the main camera, Shannon could see Riley's head snap toward the shallow end. Even from this angle, you could see the moment of recognition, the instant calculation of danger. Then Ethan Williams slipped into the deep end. Shannon's breath caught as she watched the impossible situation unfold in real time. 2 children, 2 emergencies. 1 lifeguard is facing a split-second decision that would define her career and reputation. Camera 2 showed Ethan entering the water, his friends pointing and shouting. Camera 4 showed Holly stepping into water over her head, panic beginning to set in as she realized her floaty wasn't working. And the main camera showed Riley launch herself from her chair, but instead of heading toward Ethan, where the crowd was gathering and pointing, Riley sprinted toward Holly. The rescue was textbook perfect. Riley reached Holly in seconds, scooping the little girl from the water with practiced efficiency. She handed Holly to her now alert mother, exchanged a few quick words, then spun around and raced back toward Ethan. By the time she reached the deep end, a parent had already jumped in to help the boy. Riley dove in anyway, assisting with the rescue and helping get Ethan safely to the pool deck. The entire sequence took maybe 40 seconds, but the phone video had captured only the middle portion, Riley's absence from her post, not the reason for it. "My God," Shannon whispered. She turned to Clark, who was watching the footage with growing understanding. She didn't freeze. She performed a double rescue. She saved Holly Brennan, then was on her way to save Ethan Williams. Clark sat in silence, the surveillance footage still fresh in his mind. The truth of what he'd just seen unsettled him. Riley, moving with calm precision, guiding one child to safety while keeping eyes on the pool. There had been no hesitation, no freeze, just a young lifeguard making an impossible decision in real time. The viral phone video. he realized, had captured none of this. It had shown only what it could: an empty lifeguard chair. A single panicked moment taken out of context. Shannon didn't need to push further. The footage spoke for itself. Minutes later, she was back in her car, dialing her editor as her hands trembled slightly on the wheel. "Jim, we need to stop everything. That lifeguard story, we got it completely wrong." The line crackled with disbelief, but she pressed on. Riley Hayes didn't freeze. She didn't fail. She executed a rescue that in the end saved 2 kids. The world just didn't see it. Before heading back to the newsroom, Shannon made one more call. She'd gotten Holly's mother's number from the emergency contact form at the pool office. Standard protocol, but now a bridge to the truth. Olivia Brennan's voice cracked the moment she answered. "I saw what they were saying about Riley, and I didn't speak up. I was ashamed." She paused, then added, "But I watched her carry my daughter out of that water. Holly could have died." Riley didn't freeze. She chose Holly first because no one else had noticed. And then she still ran to help Ethan. That girl saved 2 lives. That was all Shannon needed. She gripped the wheel tighter, heart pounding, ready to write the story that might finally set things right. As Shannon sped back to the newsroom, her thoughts raced faster than the car. As she prepared to write the piece that could undo the damage, one image haunted her: the narrow frame of a viral clip that had nearly destroyed someone's life. Because sometimes, she thought, the most heroic acts happen just outside the camera's view. Shannon's article went live at 6 a.m. on a Friday, exactly 1 week after the original video had gone viral. The headline read, "Lifeguard blamed in viral video was saving another child. Exclusive footage reveals full story." Shannon's article was calm, clear, and quietly devastating. She included quotes from Holly's mother, praise from pool regulars, and most crucially, stills from the security footage. Proof that Riley had acted swiftly and saved a life before the camera ever caught her absence. The internet's response was swift once again, but this time in Riley's favor. Within hours, Shannon's article went viral. The tide turned fast. Apologies filled the comment sections, and news outlets began issuing corrections. "Riley Hayes is a hero," one post read, "and we tried to destroy her." The original video now circulated with the truth attached, spreading redemption nearly as fast as the blame once had. But the first call Riley received was from Coach Terrence. She was still in her pajamas, sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open, watching her reputation resurrect itself in real time when her phone rang at 7:30 a.m. "Riley," his voice was thick with emotion and something deeper. "Shame. I just read the article. I just saw the surveillance footage screenshots." Riley waited, heart pounding. Coach Terrence's voice was low with regret. "You saved 2 kids, and I doubted you. I let the noise get to me. I should have known better." Tears welled in Riley's eyes, not from shame this time, but from relief. "I've watched you handle emergencies with calm most lifeguards never learn," he said. "I failed you." He paused. "I'm retiring. And before I go, I'm recommending you for head lifeguard, full reinstatement, back pay, and a formal apology. You earned that, Riley. You always did." The rest of the morning blurred into calls and messages. Her college confirmed her admission was secure, apologizing for the earlier doubts. News stations requested interviews. Even her high school paper asked for a graduation quote. Of all the messages and calls, it was one from Holly's mother that stayed with her the most. Olivia Brennan's voice came through the phone, soft and trembling. She didn't waste time on small talk. "You saved my daughter's life," she said, "and then you helped save another. And instead of being thanked, you were torn apart. I should have been there for you, and I wasn't." Riley sat still, eyes closed, recalling the weight of Holly in her arms, the wet cling of her floaties, the rush of urgency and instinct. Olivia admitted the truth she'd been carrying in silence. She had been distracted, lost in casual conversation as Holly's floaty deflated. Unaware of the danger until Riley stepped in, shame had kept her from speaking. Until now. "I let my guilt stop me from protecting you," Olivia said, "and I'll regret that for a long time." Riley didn't know what to say, but she knew this call, this quiet acknowledgement, meant more than any headline or broadcast apology. It was real, and it mattered. That afternoon, the Willow River Pool board convened an emergency meeting. At the front, the board looked somber. Chairman Clark, usually composed and curt, stood with visible unease. He acknowledged their mistake. Reading from prepared remarks, her suspension was lifted, her pay reinstated, and the board would be honored to have her return. Riley barely registered the applause that followed. Her eyes had landed on Holly, sitting in the front row in a yellow sundress, holding a crayon-colored card. Then David Brennan, Holly's father, rose, not a man used to speaking in public, but today, he needed to be heard. He told the room what had really happened, how his daughter had slipped underwater, how Riley had seen what no one else did, how her fast thinking had saved Holly's life, and then, without pause, she'd gone to help Ethan. Olivia Brennan stood beside him, holding their daughter's hand. "We owe Riley a debt we can never repay," she said simply, "and the world owes her an apology." No headlines played here, no viral edits. Just a room full of people finally seeing the quiet hero standing in front of them, and realizing they nearly lost her to a lie. Holly, prompted by her mother, stepped forward with her handmade card. She was shy in front of the crowd, but her small voice carried in the quiet room. "Thank you for saving me," she said, looking directly at Riley. The card was a child's drawing of two stick figures at a pool, one tall, one tiny, connected by a heart drawn in red crayon. Riley knelt to Holly's level, taking the card with trembling hands. For a moment, everything else disappeared. No headlines, no judgment, just a 5-year-old alive because of a choice. Riley made in seconds. "You're very welcome, sweetheart," Riley said softly. "Just remember to always swim with a grown-up watching, okay?" Holly nodded solemnly, then surprised Riley with a fierce hug that lasted long enough for several parents to wipe their eyes. As the last of the crowd drifted away, a reporter approached with a mic and a practiced smile. The camera light blinked on. Riley stood still, Holly's crayon drawing folded in her hand, the weight of the past week pressing against her ribs. She spoke steadily, not with anger, but with quiet conviction. Being a lifeguard meant making fast, difficult decisions. Often, those choices weren't visible. Often, they were misunderstood, but that didn't make them wrong. Her voice remained calm as she finished. "Sometimes the most important work happens outside the frame. Sometimes heroes don't get to choose how their story is told, but that doesn't make their actions any less necessary or any less real." The light flicked off, and for the first time in days, Riley smiled. 6 months later, Riley Hayes stood in front of a group of 15 new lifeguard trainees at the Willow River Pool. She was now the head instructor for the certification program, a role Coach Terrence had insisted she take after his retirement. "Pool safety isn't just about what happens in your designated zone," she told the young faces looking up at her. "It's about reading the entire environment, understanding that emergencies can happen simultaneously, and trusting your training to make the right decisions even when those decisions might be misunderstood." Midway through a scenario involving multiple swimmers in distress, a boy toward the back hesitantly raised his hand. 17, maybe, with a slight frame and uncertainty behind his eyes. "But what if you make the wrong choice?" Alex asked. "What if people criticize you?" Riley paused, letting the question settle. She thought of that day, of the headlines, the silence, and then of Holly's drawing now framed in her bedroom, two stick figures holding hands, connected by a heart. She smiled gently. "The people who matter will understand eventually," she said. "And the ones who don't, they're not the ones you're trying to save." Later, as the others filtered out for lunch, Alex lingered by the edge of the training pool. He approached slowly, hands tucked into the pockets of his red swim shorts. "Miss Hayes," he said, voice low, "I saw that video of you from last year. Before people knew what really happened, I thought you'd messed up. I'm sorry." She turned toward him, the sun catching the water on her shoulders. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But here's what I learned. The truth doesn't always come first. Sometimes it takes time, and people who are willing to look deeper than a headline." She picked up a rescue tube, slinging it across her shoulder. "What matters is that you act with integrity when it counts. The rest has a way of catching up." Alex gave a small nod, a little straighter now, and Riley turned back to the water, steady and sure, no longer proving anything, just teaching the kind of lifeguard she knew the world still needed. That afternoon, as Riley settled into her lifeguard chair for the first time since her suspension, she noticed a familiar car pulling into the parking lot. Shannon Reed emerged, now a friend as well as the reporter who'd changed her life. "How does it feel to be back?" Shannon asked, settling into a chair beside the lifeguard station. Riley surveyed the pool, children playing in the shallow end, lap swimmers cutting through the water, parents lounging in the sun. Holly Brennan was there with her mother, swimming confidently without floaties. Ethan Williams was practicing his diving technique, having overcome his own trauma from that day. "It feels like coming home," Riley said, "like remembering who I am." A local news crew approached, not for scandal this time, but for a feature story about second chances and the importance of seeking truth. The reporter, a young woman not much older than Riley, asked the question that had become inevitable. "Miss Hayes, after everything you've been through, what would you want people to take away from your story?" Riley considered the question, watching Holly execute a perfect backstroke across the pool. She thought about viral videos and incomplete narratives, about split-second decisions and long-term consequences, about the difference between being seen and being understood. "You don't always see a hero's work in the frame," she said finally. "Sometimes the most important actions happen in the margins, in the spaces between what people are looking at. But that doesn't make them any less real, any less necessary, any less heroic." The reporter nodded, scribbling notes, but Riley's attention had already returned to the pool, where the children were playing, swimming, and learning to navigate the water safely. Her whistle hung around her neck, her eyes swept the deck methodically, and her heart held the quiet confidence of someone who'd learned that truth, like rescue, sometimes takes time to surface. In the end, the viral video that had nearly destroyed her career became a teaching tool for her classes, a reminder that perspective matters, that context is crucial, and that heroes don't always get to choose how their story is told, but they do get to choose how they respond when the complete truth finally emerges. Riley Hayes had chosen to return to the water, to trust in her training, and to save lives both inside and outside the frame. And every day, as she watched over the swimmers in her care, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the most profound acts of courage happen in moments no camera will ever capture, in the split second between seeing danger and choosing to act, in the space between perception and reality, in the quiet certainty that doing right matters more than being seen doing it. The pool reflected the afternoon sun like a mirror, and Riley Hayes sat at its edge, guardian and guide, protector and teacher, no longer the subject of a viral video, but the author of her own redemption, one rescued life, one taught lesson, one moment of truth at a time. The world won't always notice, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Don't forget, everyday heroes are all around us.